Titled, Harsh Words Stir Up Anger. Harsh Words Stir Up Anger. And, actually, we'll go back a verse here. We're going to start this out by reading Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1, but we will be going over to 2 Samuel chapter 3. We're just going to use this verse to set the stage here, okay? It says, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger, okay? Grievous words, other translations have this translated as harsh words stir up anger, okay? And a soft answer is a gentle answer. So the contrast here is answering somebody with gentleness versus being very harsh and abrupt and sort of rude, right? So if the Proverbs say here, if we answer gently, if we give gentle answers to people in controversies and whatever, it turns away wrath. But if we approach a conversation with bitterness, it's going to stir up anger, okay? And we see various biblical examples of this. Two major examples of this in history are in Judges chapter 12, 1 through 6. 42,000, I want you to pay attention, just by the words of one person or by a group of people, 42,000 Ephraimites, people of the tribe of Ephraim, lost their lives due to their harsh words that angered Jephthah, okay? They spoke harshly to Jephthah. It caused a war, and 42,000 people of the tribe of Ephraim lost their lives. Could have been avoided had they just approached the controversy with love and kindness, but instead the Ephraimites went over there and they wanted to speak really harsh to Jephthah and really tell him how it should be. Okay, now we're not talking about speaking the truth boldly. We're not saying we're talking about brotherly love within the church, within your community, and how to approach conversations and how not to be harsh or bitter, because it causes huge problems, right? Huge problems within the church. 2 Chronicles chapter 10, verses 9 through 19, there's an example where Solomon's son Rehoboam took the advice of the young counselors, instead of the old wise men, and spoke very harshly to the elders of Israel, literally causing the civil war between the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. It caused the kingdom of Israel to split into two, because the king spoke harsh words. He spoke harshly to the Israelites, and they got offended, and they said, you know what? We don't have any portion with you guys. We're out here, all of Israel, to their tents, because Rehoboam could have just spoken with wisdom and said, hey guys, we can work this out. We're going to figure this out. I'm your king, and I want to treat you guys with dignity and respect. Instead, Rehoboam says, if you think my father was harsh on you guys, I'm going to be 10 times harsher, and you're going to obey me. And that offended Israel and caused the civil war. All right. So it's amazing how a harsh response can cause such great trouble and division versus a kind, thoughtful, patient response. And we're going to see an example of that in 2 Samuel chapter 3. We're going to go through this entire chapter. We're going to see an example where another king decided he was going to be harsh towards somebody instead of, thinking before he spoke and using wisdom. And it's going to cause him to lose his kingdom. All right. 2 Samuel 3 verse 1. Now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. Now, what had happened prior to this was Saul and Jonathan were killed in battle. David was promised to be king for over 20 years, and Saul was chasing him. But now that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead. Now it's time for David to assume the kingdom. But one of Saul's sons does not want to give up the kingdom. His name was Ishbosheth, and we'll see his name here in a little bit. And so the kingdom is still is divided at this point. This is interesting because when you look at Israel's history, we studied Israel under Moses through the judges, and it was a united kingdom for the most part, a united nation. But now it's actually split in two, and then we're going to find out it's going to be united under David, and then under Solomon's son, it's going to be split again. So the kingdom of Israel, has gone through some turmoil, some civil war, some splits, and some divisions, much like the Christian church today. All right, so there was long war between the two houses. David waxed stronger and stronger. Saul's house waxed weaker and weaker, as it should have been. All right. And unto David were sons born in Hebron. His firstborn was Ammon of Hinnom, the Jezreelitess, and his second, Chileab of Abigail, the wife of Nabal, the Carmelite. Now, I want to say something about Abigail since we're on this topic. She actually, because her husband spoke harsh words of David, David was going to go there and wipe out every single male of that family, of that city. But she came out and pleaded and spoke soft and kind words to David and said, hey, my husband, who's dead at this time, but my husband, you spoke very harshly to you. We're very sorry. And she came out and gave peace offerings. She said he's a foolish man and all this kind of stuff, right? Then he ends up, God kills that guy 10 days later. Well, David, first of all, he showed mercy because of her coming out and making peace. And then 10 days later, he dies. Nabal, the rude guy, the foolish guy, dies, and David takes Abigail to be his wife. That's how he ended up marrying this woman. She was wise. She was very thoughtful. All right, Abigail, the wife of Nabal, the Carmelite, and the third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. All right, David's got various wives, as we can see here, and various sons. And the fourth, Adoniah, the son of Higgith. The fifth, Shephatiah, the son of Abital. Okay, a lot of tongue twisters here. And the sixth, Ithream, by Eglah, David's wife. These were born to David in Hebron. Okay, all right. 6 sons, 6 different wives there. Verse 6, and it came to pass while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul. All right, now Abner, Jacob, Abner was the general for Ishbosheth, okay? The king. So there's 2 kings right now. David has been anointed king of Judah, and Ishbosheth is king of Israel right now. All right, king of Israel right now. And all right, they were divided. All right, and I'm sorry, Abner, the point is, Abner was Ishbosheth's general. Okay? The general that opposes David and his house. And Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, wherefore, or why have you gone in unto my father's concubine? Now Saul was dead at this time. We don't know if this accusation was true or not. We don't know if he actually took Saul's concubine, but he's being accused of doing it. And we're going to see that this is going to be a great insult to Abner after all he has done for this king, Ishbosheth. Now, it's interesting. Ishbosheth means man of shame. Man of shame. All right. Verse 8. Then was Abner very wroth for the words of Ishbosheth, and said, Am I a dog's head, which against Judah do show kindness this day unto the house of Saul thy father, to his brethren, to his friends, and have not delivered thee into the hand of David, that thou chargest me today with a fault concerning this woman? So I want you guys to pay attention here real quick here. What's going on? Ishbosheth, no doubt, was a sort of a weak leader. He relied mainly on Abner to solidify his kingdom, because Abner was his general and he would fight and so forth. But then this weak leader goes and literally snubs or takes a swipe at the guy that delivers him the kingdom, Abner. So Abner's very offended. He's saying, you're charging me with an offense here with this woman. And so either Abner took that concubine to himself, which if he did, he probably feels like he has the honor and the dignity to do so after all he's done for the house of Saul. Or if he's being falsely accused, this is really a great insult to him. And he's like, this is just too much for him to handle. So from Abner's perspective, Abner thought his loyalty to the house of Saul was being rewarded with a gross insult, a harsh insult. And he is not happy about it. Now that's important. Loyalty is something that I believe firmly in. Some people are loyal to nothing, to nobody, right? But if you got a guy like this, like Abner, Ishbosheth should have gave this guy every benefit of the doubt. He should have treated him with honor, should have treated him with respect because of all that Abner had done for him. But Ishbosheth had no loyalty to Abner. Why? Why did people who are unloyal to others, what is it usually about? Them, okay? They're usually a very selfish person that uses other people for their gain. It's not a two-way street, right? It's not you've done a lot of good things for me. I respect you. I honor you, and I'm going to reward you with this. A very selfish person will use people and throw them away. And that's the way Ishbosheth was. And we want to be careful in our lives that we reward hard work, diligence, with our loyalty to people who have worked hard for us, that have helped us in our life, whether you're in a community or some organization or a business. Loyalty is important, and Ishbosheth had none of that, and instead spoke harshly to Abner, and it's going to cause him great trouble here, as we're going to see. Verse 9. So do God to Abner, and more also, except as the Lord has sworn to David, even so I do to him. Check this out. To translate, Abner speaking now, his wrath just got stirred up by Ishbosheth's insult, thoughtless insult. To translate the kingdom from the house of Saul and to set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah. See the two houses there? Over Israel and over Judah, from Dan even to Beersheba. Dan being the very north of the nation and Beersheba being to the south. So because of Ishbosheth's insult to Abner, Abner says, you know what, buddy? Thank you for your loyalty. Now I'm going to do whatever I can to give the kingdom to David from Dan to Beersheba. All right? Think about that. One man's foolish, harsh statement is going to cost him his entire kingdom. He's going to lose the loyalty of his greatest servant, Abner, because of his foolish, hot words. Okay, 2 Samuel 3 verse 11. And he could not answer Abner a word again because he feared him. Again, Ishbosheth didn't really have much power on his own. Abner was the guy that literally gave him all of his power. And so Ishbosheth could not say anything back to Abner when he just said, I'm going to give the kingdom to David now because of the way you're treating me. And I'll go in a little bit on that. It's important. I mean, as Christians, how we treat each other and how we treat other people is so important, okay? Jesus talks many times about blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the meek in heart and all that. But oftentimes, now again, in this generation, it's very hard because how many true Christians are there in America now? How many people going to church are actually Bible-believing Christians? There's not that many of them now. So we don't want somebody to mistake this as, well, Pastor Ben, you're talking about speaking harsh words. I hear you saying harsh words about 90% of the churches, right? Those aren't our brethren right now. That would be like, instance, the house of Saul versus the house of David, right? They were fighting, okay? Because one was on the side of the right and one was on the side of the wrong. It's not to say there's never going to be war. There's never going to be harsh words to each other. We're talking about when there should be unity among brethren and there's not because somebody is very cold, impersonable, harsh, and so on. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. And Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, Who is the land? Saying also, Make thy league with me, and behold, my hand shall be with thee, to bring about all Israel unto thee. Okay? Now, this is a big move here. I mean, David and Joab was David's general. They had been fighting wars against Ishbosheth and Abner. They were literally fighting wars. People were dying, and there were friends dying, family members dying because of these battles. So for Abner to come over and say, David, I want to make a league with you is absolutely everything at this point. Okay? That this league will de facto bring about all of the tribes to David so that David would be king over not just part of Israel, not just Judah, but over all Israel. And that's what he's promising here. Abner. And he said, David's response, I will make a league with thee. But one thing I require of thee, that is, thou shalt not see my face, except thou bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when thou comest to see my face. Now, if you remember, Michal was David's first lawful wife, okay? Saul's daughter. But later on, when Saul was jealous of David because David really was doing the things that a king would do. He's fighting the battles. He's defeating the Philistines. He really has the heart of the people, and Saul was jealous and wanted him killed, tried to kill him a number of times. Then Saul, in his wicked jealousy, took Michal away from David, okay? So they're really still married, okay? And because they were never lawfully separated other than, Saul taking her away from David, and David was on the run, so he didn't have his wife for all these years. And David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, Deliver me my wife Michal, which I espoused to me for 100 foreskins of the Philistines. If you can remember, that was a time when Saul said, hey, whoever goes out to this battle and delivers me this many foreskins, I will let you marry my daughter. And David did that. She rightfully became, that was his dowry payment. She rightfully became his wife, okay, Michal. And David wants her back. And Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, okay? Saul let her marry another man, which was unlawful because she was married to David, even from Phaltiel, the son of Laish. And her husband went with her along, weeping behind her to Bahurim. Then said Abner unto him, Go, return. And he returned. So this poor guy, you could almost feel sorry for him. I mean, now he's married to this woman, and somebody says, no, we're taking her away from you and giving her to David, and he's following after her, crying. All right, you could feel really bad for him. But at the same time, we have to realize she was not lawfully that man's wife. Okay. She was never separated from David legal by any legal means. She was unlawfully stolen away from David. So this isn't any, I don't think this is a fault of David. This is really, it's this guy's fault, right? Somehow he should have known that's Saul, I'm sorry, I can't take her to wife. That's David's wife. I'm not doing it, right? So now he's got heartache and all of this. He's very upset. Verse 17, man, who needs Hollywood when you have biblical drama going on here, right? Could you imagine the exciting movies they could make if they tried to make them? Literally every book of the Bible has some drama, something that's tugging on your emotions and your heart and making you think and all this. 2 Samuel 3 verse 17, and Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, you sought for David in times past to be king over you. Interesting. So now he goes back to the elders of Israel saying, hey, I know all you guys were really wanting David to be your king. These guys are, the elders were under the kingdom of Ishbosheth right now. Kingdom was not united yet. It was divided. Now then do it, for the Lord has spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines and out of the hand of all their enemies. Interesting here. We got to remember that David is a type of Christ, okay? There are a lot of people yet who have not given their heart. A lot of our kinsmen that have not given their heart to David, but are rather following after man, right? After some man, after their own power, after their own might. You could say Ishbosheth, in a sense, is a type of the Antichrist, and David a type of the true Christ. And you got the people now moving away from the, what did Ishbosheth mean? A man of shame. Yeah, man of shame. Okay. Now you have this loyalty of the people coming back to the true David, which would be Christ in a spiritual sense. So remember when Jesus walked with his disciples after he was in disguise, right? He walked with his disciples after the crucifixion, after the resurrection. He came and was walking with them. They're mourning and weeping. And he starts expounding to them all the prophecies concerning the Messiah, concerning himself. They didn't know it was him at the time. From Genesis all the way through the prophets. And you wonder, well, what stories was he telling them about? What dots were he connecting? I have no doubt he was going into stories like this. And he probably said, hey, do you remember the story of Ishbosheth and David? Well, David was a type of the Messiah, and the people would come, and all this kind of stuff. It's fascinating how much depth, how much truth is locked into the Old Testament in stories and examples, okay? Historical accounts and examples, I should say. Because Jesus ultimately is the Savior, right? He's going to save us out of the hand of the spiritual Philistines, out of the hand of all of our enemies, save us from sin. All right. Verse 19, and Abner also spake in the ears of Benjamin. And Abner, remember the house of Saul was of Benjamin. They were Benjaminites. And Abner went also to speak in the ears of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, all that seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. I find this fascinating. Abner literally is like an evangelist here now, right? He's spreading the gospel of the kingdom to all Israel, getting them to turn away from the man of shame and getting them to turn to the righteous king, which was David. Amazing. Verse 20. So Abner came to David to Hebron, and 20 men with him. And David made Abner and the men that were with him a feast. Think about this. Bitter enemies killing one another are now sitting down and having a feast. Again, I mentioned earlier, Matthew chapter 5, blessed are the peacemakers, Jesus said, right? David here didn't have to. One thing I want us to see here, David was always seemed ready and eager to forgive and move forward with his brethren that had wronged him in the past. Think of how many times he was ready to forgive Saul for trying to kill him and still honored him as the king, even though God had already promised that David would be the king. Most of us would say, well, God promised me to be king. That guy's not king anymore. I got a chance to kill him. I'll take him out, right? That's how a lot of us would think. David wasn't like that. He was always ready to make peace with his brethren, okay? Despite being awfully mistreated by them many a times. So they're having a feast together. Man, that is brethren dwelling together in unity there. That's an amazing thing. I can't wait till the millennial era when Jesus returns and there is that, all the tribes of Israel have bowed a knee to him, and we have that kind of fellowship going on. We're feasting, we're rejoicing, we're celebrating. But something's going to crash the party here, okay? And Abner said unto David, I will arise and go, and I will gather all Israel unto my lord the king. Again, he's an evangelist here. That they may make a league with thee, that thou mayest reign over all that thine heart desireth. And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. The league was made. They're brethren now. The kingdom, he's promised to deliver him the kingdom. Verse 22, and behold, the servants of David and Joab came from pursuing a troop and brought in great spoil with them. Now remember, Joab is David's general, okay? But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he was gone in peace. When Joab and all the host that was with him were come, they told Joab, saying, Abner, the son of Ner, came to the king, and he has sent him away, and is gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king and said, What hast thou done? Behold, Abner came unto thee. Why is it that thou hast sent him away, and he is quite gone? So you could imagine Joab. There's some jealousy going on here, and some, he doesn't trust Abner, and you could totally understand that, right? These are two men that were at bitter conflict with one another. Joab and Abner, two mighty generals, and Joab now is offended because Abner was accepted by the king. Thou knowest Abner, the son of Ner, that he came to deceive thee, and to know thy going out and thy coming in, and to know all that thou doest. Now, we know that from our perspective looking in, that this is not true. Abner literally was offended by Ishbosheth because Ishbosheth showed no loyalty to him. And then he decided, oh, you know what, I'm going to do. And then it seemed like he had an awakening, right? Abner knew that there were many prophecies concerning David being king. So it seemed to be the one thing that woke him up. He's probably looked at Ishbosheth after that and thought, why am I serving this guy? Why am I putting all of my time and effort into propping this guy up? I know what kind of man he is now. David should be the king, right? David should be the king. And so we know that Abner was not trying to deceive David, but Joab, you can't totally fault him for this. And I will say this, so you guys know, I know we're not covering every chapter together in here, but there's some bitter hatred between Abner and Joab, not just because they were fighting wars against each other, but it wasn't that long ago, a chapter or two ago, that Abner killed Joab's brother in battle. All right? He killed his brother in battle. So you can imagine if this was you, how you would feel, okay? How you would feel. And when Joab was come out from David, the man that killed your brother now just made a league with the king, who you also were serving, right? And when Joab was come out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, which brought him again from the well of Sirah, but David knew it not. So Joab pursues Abner. David knew nothing about it. And when Abner was returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him quietly. All right. He literally leads him like, hey, he's deceiving him here. Okay. And smote him there under the fifth rib, that he died for the blood of Asahel, his brother. All right. So he murders this guy. He assassinates him. It's very interesting. David, we're going to see even at the end here, and we've seen all throughout his career, David believed that vengeance is of the Lord. He believed in situations like this, that you don't take, if it's one of your brethren, you don't take them out in anger. David would go against the Philistines, cut off the head of the giant. That's one thing. But against your own brethren, against the people that are chosen by God, you let God take care of those things. That's what David's perspective was. But Joab took vengeance in his own hands. Now, what is the lesson for us? To not be a Joab, right? Because our natural inclination is to be like Joab. We're sinners, right? Our natural inclination is, I'm going to get vengeance on this guy because he wronged me. I'm going to get him. He killed my brother, right? I'm going to get him back. Do you think about this? What's that going to solve? Yes, it's terrible. There's emotions that are running high. This guy killed your brother, but it was in lawful warfare, right? Now, what this guy's doing, Joab, he murders this guy. He doesn't even try to challenge him to a fight or anything. He literally murders him. Now, somebody else, it's going to be a never-ending cycle if somebody doesn't stop it. Somebody's going to be offended. Somebody's going to be deeply hurt because you killed somebody else, and then it's going to be a non-stop killing. And if you watch the mainstream news media, and what they try to do, they're always trying to set us up against another, always trying to keep us fighting each other, right? Who's behind all this? Think about it. Who's behind Joab's deep bitterness? Satan is, right? Satan is, because he knows that a kingdom divided cannot stand. The kingdom of Israel is about to finally be united, but now Joab's murder is going to put this whole process in danger. The lesson for us is to not let Satan take advantage of us to keep us continually divided one against another. All right. So David was kind and forgiving, but a fierce warrior. Joab was a fierce warrior, but he was bitter and vindictive. All right, bitter and vindictive. All right, let's see what happens. Verse 28, and afterward, when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord forever from the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and on all his father's house. And let there not fail from the house of Joab one that hath an issue, or that is a leper, or that leaneth on a staff, or that falleth on the sword, or that lacketh bread. So David literally pronounced a curse, I have no doubt via the Holy Spirit, upon Joab's house for doing this. So did Joab help? Did Joab help him? Did he get anywhere by taking vengeance on his own? No, he just brought a curse upon his own family. He's going to have children that'll be lepers. He's going to have cripples, and he's going to have all kinds of stuff come through his family line. Now, I want to caution, just because somebody might have children that are, special needs or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of the sins of the parents and all that. But we do know there is a biblical precedent for parents bringing on curses to their generations of children following them. So that there is such a thing doesn't necessarily mean that we're not to sit there and judge people. If we see somebody, oh, look at, he's got a deformed foot. What did your parents do? We're not the judge. Okay. So far be it from that. But we must realize that we can bring curses upon our generations of kids by our unrighteous acts, and we don't want that to happen, right? 2 Samuel 3, verse 30. So Joab and Abishai, his brother, slew Abner because he had slain their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. Now, I will say this. I read that battle. Obviously, I'm going through all these chapters, chapter by chapter and verse by verse with my kids, and then we pick up about where we're at here. But Abner warned Asahel, who could run like a deer. It said he could run like a deer, and he was chasing Abner, and Abner kept telling him, dude, stop chasing me. If you get too close to me, I'm going to have to kill you. And Asahel just kept pursuing him, and then finally Abner turned around and speared him with his spear, and he died. So Abner tried to give this guy a chance. Okay, so I don't know if Joab knows that or what, but Abner had no choice. Abner didn't maliciously go out and try to kill Joab's brother. Asahel pursued him and tried to kill him, and he defended himself. All right? And he didn't want to kill him. Abner didn't want to kill him because he knew that he was Joab's brother, and he knew that would make things even worse for the division in Israel. Okay? Next verse. If we can get there. It was going so smooth until, there we go. And David said to Joab and to all the people that were with him, rend your clothes and gird you with sackcloth and mourn before Abner. And the king himself followed the bier, or the bed, if you would, sort of like a coffin, or something they're carrying the body to be out to be buried, right? So David's mourning over the loss of Abner. Remember, that was his bitter enemy. Abner was fighting wars against him. But David made a league with him. He was honoring that league and truly mourned for the loss of this man. And they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king lamented over Abner and said, died Abner as a fool dieth? Thy hands were not bound, nor thy feet put into fetters. As a man falleth before wicked men, so fellest thou. And all the people wept again over him. So David's saying, he died he died a terrible death. He died getting murder. It was a very dishonorable thing that Joab had committed. And when all the people came to cause David to eat meat, while it was yet day, David sware, saying, so do God to me, and more also, if I taste bread or aught else, till the sun be down. And I'm telling you what, you look at David, he really is the man, besides his the one thing that he did really bad, right, with Bathsheba, the man that all of us men should try to model ourselves after. A fierce warrior, but very quick to forgive, quick to forget, and always honoring those who deserved honor. And all the people took notice of it. Check this out. All the people took notice of it. You would think that a lot of the people, now Satan's plan, no doubt, was to get Joab to murder Abner to keep the division there, right? But now they see that David is genuine. They see that David's mourning is genuine, and that David must not have had anything to do with the death of Abner. Because the first thing you would think of is, oh, sure, David makes a league with Abner, and then he goes away and David sends guys out to kill him. That's going to just totally blow up the kingdom. But David's righteousness, as you're going to see here, is going to still unify the kingdom under Satan's plot to keep it fighting against each other, to keep them fighting against each other. And all the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, as whatsoever the king did pleased all the people. Okay, they loved David's purity of heart. They knew his intentions were pure. For all the people and all Israel understood that day that it was not of the king to slay Abner, the son of Ner. They knew They knew that they knew David wasn't behind this. And the king said unto his servants, know you not that there is a prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel? Amazing. Think about that. I think back to the American Civil War, right? A lot of the people of the, even in the North, right? We had the North versus the South. There were a lot of people in the North that were great fighting men, great Christians, that respected General Lee, right? That respected General Lee. But there were others that didn't, right? That just wanted the division, the constant fighting, and all that, the tares among the wheat. But here, he's honored, this man that had been fighting wars against David. He's being honored by David as a great man and as a prince. Now, did Ishbosheth treat Abner like a prince? No, he accused him of stealing his father's concubine when his father was dead. Whether he took the concubine or not, this man was of princely character. And if anybody deserved Saul's concubine, it would not have been Ishbosheth, because he was a weak, jealous leader. It would have been Abner. Okay, Abner would have rightfully earned the right to the concubine there. Anyways, let's go to verse 39. And I am this day weak, because David's very emotionally upset by the death of this man, though anointed king, and these men, now check this out, this is so important, this is why we titled the study the way we did. These men, the sons of Zeruiah, okay, Joab and his brother, sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me, too harsh, okay, too harsh. The Lord shall reward the doer of evil according to his wickedness. All right. Too harsh. Now, remember, David was a mighty warrior. He killed Saul killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. But it's the intent that we're talking about here. Every situation is different. When you're fighting the Philistines and God has told you to wipe them out, you wipe them out. But he doesn't tell you to wipe out your brothers and your fellow tribesmen, okay? And another thing I want to say, there's something special about David is when you see how fierce he could be with the enemies of Israel, and you see how kind and patient he is with the Israelites, there's very little of that among, I think, our men today in America. All right. How many men, and I'm just gonna say it, how many white men that are of the descendants of Israel truly value their kinsmen, their flesh and their bone, okay? As you'll see in the book of Samuel, that was important to David as well. Your flesh and your bone, your heritage, your people, okay? That was a mark of David. That's why he was a man after God's own heart, because he cared for his people like a shepherd does his sheep, okay? Like a shepherd does his sheep. Amazing lessons that we can learn from this book. Man, you wonder why the church in America is so corrupt, so wicked, and they have so many pastors like Ishbosheth. It's because so many of them do not take the time to study the Bible chapter by chapter and verse by verse, especially the Old Testament. I can tell you what, as I go through and I read these stories and I look at how David reacted to a situation, and I automatically think I would have probably wanted to react the opposite way. And it's humbling to me just going through these great books of Samuel and seeing the way we should act versus the way we want to act, okay? And unfortunately, a great many of our churches do not take the time to learn these lessons. And that's why we have a very corrupt church these days that has fallen into great apostasy. So we will, I guess we'll just go right into questions and comments with that said.
A couple of comments or questions I have is as far as Joab is concerned. Again, my lack of the Old Testament knowledge. Does it go on to say what happened to him and his family throughout history?
I believe really soon here, and don't quote me on this, but I believe really soon here he's going to have a leper son or a crippled, or no, maybe that's the house of Saul. Maybe the house of Saul might have another son that's crippled. I can't remember. Like I said, we're basically I'm studying this with my kids, and we're basically about right here. We're a few chapters ahead. And did I miss any? We're at chapter 7 right now.
Jonathan's son was 11.
Okay, Jonathan. So it wasn't Joab's son. So we haven't got that far yet. But if my memory serves me right from studying this book years prior, Joab is going to play a major role as David's general throughout the next period of David's life here.
So they kind of make up.
Yeah, I think they do. And that's kind of interesting too, is when I look at that, I'm like, yeah, David dealt with, he didn't automatically the world wasn't perfect around David. Sometimes we think that everything's got to be perfect. Sometimes we're going to work with other sinners, right? That are maybe did something terrible, but yet we still have to work with them. And David still, because Joab was a very good general, I think David, still kept him there. And so we don't get to pick our team all the time, exactly all the players we want. Sometimes God does that, and I feel it teaches us many lessons by having it be like that, I think.
Also was thinking that, I'm definitely pro-Trump as far as what we have to choose this election, and I think he'd do great things for our country. I don't know if it'll be, he's going to lead us to God or not. I would hope he would, or at least maybe put leaders in that would do that. But sometimes I think, the harsh word thing, I don't know, this is the soft side of me coming out. Part of me loves how Trump is just in the face of what I would say the evil.
Right.
And he calls them out and, calls them names. But I also see that is what causes a lot of people, even on the right side, to not like him because he's so rude and crass and just says mean things. And a lot of people, I guess, are too sensitive to that. I just wonder if, you're talking about harsh words, can ruin things within God's kingdom, but you think it goes as far as to harsh words towards your enemy, and then it causes, I think of Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
I've heard him speak a few times since the hurricanes and stuff, and the guy's so eloquent and just very kind, and I mean he'll be tough and stuff, but he's very calculated in his words, and I think he'd make a great president. And I think if a guy like that was in, there probably wouldn't be so much animosity among even the right and the left, and people tend to just hate Trump because he says it like it is, and he calls people's names, and people don't like that, even if they're on the same team as him.
I totally get what you're saying, and those thoughts did cross my mind doing this study. As it's almost as if Trump, he lives by the harsh words, right?
Yeah.
That's gained him power, but at the same time he dies by it. It has caused him great grief throughout the years. So he kind of lives by the sword and dies by the sword. But I guess Samson was the same way. But me personally, I wouldn't model my example after Trump and say I'm going to be like Trump. I'm going to try to save my nation by being harsh, when you don't need to be.
You would or
Wouldn't want to. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad people all around him, and so sometimes I think the harshness is due.
Yeah.
to those people. And sometimes I think they need somebody to be hard on them. I think the dividing line is, okay, so if it would be more of how does Trump treat his own camp?
Right.
That would be the
Good
big
point.
thing. Yeah.
Because he was calling DeSantis names too at one point. I don't even know why. Like, if you don't 100% support him, he just all of a sudden you're his enemy, whether you're on the same team or not. You know, it's
But at this, one thing I think you can give him credit for is he can go from speaking very harsh against somebody because they're in his way or he feels they're wrong or whatever, and then totally make an ally with them afterwards.
yeah. That's true.
So I guess you could give him credit for, for that. He's willing to do that.
He also doesn't, I feel, fake as the other side is doing. He tells it like he feels it. He's not
Yeah, he's not fake.
covering himself up
Yeah.
and spreading lies. And I mean, we don't really know him, but he comes out front and says what he feels and what's going on, and
Yeah.
not hiding it like the other side is.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yep. You feel like you know what you're getting with him.
Yeah.
There's a few areas where I question, some of when you get into the religion stuff, sometimes I feel like he's playing us a little bit, placating us, saying some of the things we want to hear. But
yeah. I do believe that the getting almost shot in the head did change him a little bit. I have heard him talking a little more about God and
See Jesus.
and he was even talking about people that don't believe in God, should believe in God.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know what depth, he's, I don't know. I hope that somehow, some way he gets deeper involved in Christianity and God and recognizing God as the reason, that there's any hope for our nation.
yeah,
Sometimes he is a bit narcissistic, and I think he thinks he's our hope.
yeah.
He's the only hope, rather than God being the hope through him. But
Right. Yeah. Either way, we know God's in control, and He's using all these different. He even used Ishbosheth, I'm sure, to teach Israel some lessons on what a bad king is. And I'm not comparing Donald Trump to Ishbosheth. I'm just saying God uses a lot of different people to move about His plan, but what we are to gain from, our tactics are always the same as biblical Christians. We try to model our lives after righteousness by looking at righteous acts of David in the Old Testament and doing what he did and so on and so forth. So it's pretty, if you step back, we're curious human beings, right? We want to know what is Trump? Is God using him? Is he sparing him? Is he going to be a force for good for us, or is he going to end up putting us in a bad spot? But really at the end of the day, we can really relax and just let God control that.
yeah,
And because we got enough in our own lives that we all, if we're honest with ourselves, that aren't, our own lives we got a lot of work yet to do on them.
just as long as people don't think God being in control means you don't have to go vote.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yep. We definitely want to, Christians need to have pull and influence as much as we can get in our society, and voting is the way we do that politically. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing anything on the stream.
All right. Hopefully I'm streaming, right? Is it?
Came across.
All right. I was going to say, hopefully I hit the go button. All right. Well, if that's the case, we will close this up, and we will see everybody next time. Until then, stay in His Word every single day so that you can be a Christian overcomer. God bless.
Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the tithes and offerings of our listeners. If you would like to support our ministry, please go to ChristianOvercomers.com. God bless you, and thank you for your support.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible sword. His truth is marching on.